Welcome, everyone, to the show. I'm JJ Flizanes, your host and producer and empowerment strategist, and he's back. Terry Real is back for the third time. I'm very excited. We're going to talk about his new book. Again, if you're finding this on YouTube, just a quick note, this is my show, which means I probably will talk. And if you don't like me, that's totally cool. Where can they find more of just you?
Oh my gosh. First of all, I can't imagine anybody not liking you, but for those curmudgeons who might not, or anybody who wants to find out more about me, liking you or not, go to my name, terryreal.com. Simple as that. T like Thomas, ERRYREAL.com. That's my website. We have a really interesting quiz that you can take to figure out exactly where you're screwed up, and your partner as well, and all sorts of courses. I want to say that not much later this summer, we're going to be offering, the name of my book is called Us, and we're going to be offering an Us workshop for individuals and couples online. So if you're interested in a deeper dive in learning some of these things, that's the way to go. Go to my website and keep posted about the Us workshop coming later.
Perfect. Excellent. We're going to talk about relationships again today, because that is a specialty of Dr. Terry Real and his new book, Us, Getting Past You and Me to Build a More Loving Relationship. So, of course, I've got many questions about that, but I want to hear from you why you wrote this book.
I wrote this book. It's a funny thing. I was standing on a cliff with a friend of mine who is also a Cracker Jack brand strategist. And we were just sort of messing around. And he said to me, "What is the one thing that everybody in the world believes in that you don't believe in?" And I thought for a minute, didn't take me long. And I said, "Everybody believes that there's such a thing as an individual. And I know better. Neurobiologically, as we know more about the brain, the idea of a rugged individualist, which is so central to Western civilization, particularly America, is bullshit. There's no such thing as a rugged individualist. Neurobiologically, we are wired to co-regulate each other's nervous system. You take somebody's nervous system and you pull it out of any stimulation from anybody else, and we go crazy. Look at people in solitary confinement. There's your rugged individualist. We're pack animals. We are born as a species to interact, and our brains literally live in interaction with other brains. As the great neurobiologist Dan Siegel put it, social contact is an essential nutrient to all of our brains. We are social animals, and we have relational brains, not individual ones. And then once I realized that this idea of being an individual is a Western myth, I began to take a look at what that myth does to our society, to the planet, to issues like racism and sexism, but also in our personal relationship. And it's very destructive when it's me, or me versus you, versus the wisdom and who gets there of we're a team. Let's make this work for both of us. How are we going to work to make this work? It's a different consciousness, and it's literally a different part of your brain, as I'm sure we'll get into. So all of a sudden, the light bulb went off. And as a couples therapist of over 30 years, it occurred to me that, I have a saying, you can be right or you can be married. What's more important to you? And you can be, if one of you wins and the other one loses, you both lose. And you both lose because the loser will make the winner pay for it. This is no pie in the sky idealism. This is real politics. The essence of thinking like an individual is thinking that you are apart from nature. And you combine that with patriarchy, which I've been writing about for 30 years, which teaches us not only are we apart from nature, but we dominate nature and can control it. Whether the nature we're trying to control is our kids or our partners or our bodies, I've got to lose 10 pounds, or our brains, I've got to stop thinking so negatively. We must trade in this model that equates power with dominance instead of power with empowerment. It's what Rianne Eisler calls power with instead of power over. And if we don't come down off our high horse and realize that we are not above nature controlling it, we are in nature depending upon it, then all hell is going to break loose in our minds, in our relationships, in our families, in our society, and on the planet. We need a new paradigm.
I had Dr. Bruce Lipton on for the second time a couple months ago, and we talked about a second book, Spontaneous Evolution. And it was literally what you just said, but looking at it from the epigenetic relationship to our planet, right? And to the connection and the separateness versus, I think, what you're talking about. But you're, I think, feel like focusing it on couples and couples relationships, but the broader view affects everything. And I want to make a distinction, though, because sometimes, again, the interpretation that someone, like what they're hearing, like you can say something and they're going to pick apart what they hear, and it may not be what you said because it validates something they believe or it's in alignment with what they hear. And while I know that biochemically and neurologically and epigenetically and quantum physics, even that everything that you're saying, like I'm in alignment with, and it's true. Here's where I want to just dive into a differential of, I think, something we talked about on my first show that we did on the new rules of marriage. And because sometimes when people hear like individual, like and maybe you have a different experience, you can let me know in your work with people over the years. I find that the conversations and the stories that get created psychologically between couples, between people, they're individual in that they feel victimized and they have their point of view and they think everybody else understands their point of view and everybody else feels their pain and know what they did wrong to hurt said person. And in that way, I can see that as an individual that creates disconnection. And what I'm feeling and hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, what you're wanting to create is connection, and connection, not just between two people, but between all of us. And where I look at individualism as a good thing, not as a power over, but as a responsible person for the things I think and for my past and for the things that I choose to do with said things, the way I interpret, the way that I make up stories, that is not something that anyone else is necessarily influencing because it's literally in my brain and nobody else can think my thoughts for me. So I feel like especially in therapeutic work, coaching work, life coaching, whatever, the story over and over again is always of disempowerment because someone made me feel something. Somebody did this. And I take the absolute extreme of taking responsibility for everything, even the things you don't think you can, in order to give the power back so that you can actually do something about it, or maybe use the mirror analogy of that life reflects back to you what you need to learn or what you're giving out, so that someone can take full responsibility as an individual to not include said person that hurt my feelings, said person that said this, whatever, and you stop being a victim to that. So can we agree that there's a certain sense of there's still an emotional responsibility that a person has for what they're interpreting, what they're thinking, what stories they're creating, what they're bringing to the table, even though the goal is to not think that you live on an island by yourself. Of course, that you're affected by other people and you affect other people. And there's this sort of larger psychological, energetic connection at play.
Yeah, it's interconnected, and that doesn't submerge the individual. It just says that the individual exists in context. And first of all, we don't do victims in relational life therapy. And I'm very clear about that. I mean, there are victims, Lord help us, in the Ukraine, or people get raped, yes. But by and large, in our daily life, we don't do victims. A victim means I'm a small force being moved about by larger forces over which I have no control. Don't blame me, I'm not responsible. So I'm with you 100%. I'm responsible for my life. We even teach people, you must remember this from the new rules of marriage. I teach people to say what I make up is. We take responsibility for the narrative, the construction in our heads. What I make up is that you don't like me very much because you don't like my theory. But that's my problem. Yes, you take responsibility for all that. What I'm saying is that there's no such thing as an individual stripped of larger context.
Got it. Okay. I'm with you on that.
So, for example, yeah, I'm responsible for the story that's in my head. But if I were to do therapy with you, I'll bet the ranch, the story that's in your head, has a lot to do with your trauma as a child and the way you adapted to that trauma that you may be living out the rest of your life, your family role, the way your family saw things. You know, was your family's world a trusting one or a paranoid one or a dominating one? And what's in you are responsible for what you do in your head, but even that has a context. It's important to, that's the problem with addiction. Take sex addiction, for example. Sex addiction strips sex from its context. And when I work with a sex addict, this is very common, you recontextualize. That's what you do in recovery. So if you're a sex addict guy and you look at a pretty woman walking down the street, rather than simply objectify her, the sex addict literally learns to say to himself, wait a minute, this is a mother, this is a daughter, this is a sister. This is not just a pair of boobs and legs walking down the street. And you have to recontextualize the person in order to make them fully human to you. So yes, there are individuals. My friend Carol Gilligan says there's no relationship without voice, and there's no voice without relationship. We are individuals, but we exist in the matrix of our relationships.
Perfect. Okay. So now we have, this is the why. So the individualism idea, patriarchy, and this, power over nature is the reason why you wrote this book. Can you talk about when you wrote it, is it something you were already doing in practice that then you just wanted to put in the book, or did it change your practice?
No, it was not to whatever, but I really feel like this book is the culmination of my 30 years practice and all the other books I've written before. Look, one of the questions that I ask when I'm sitting with an individual or a couple, the most important question on my mind when you open up your mouth with me is not what are the external stressors, because a good couple can handle stress. It's not even what's the choreography, although I teach my students to pay attention. It's the more she pursues, the more he distances, the more he distances, the more, what's the vicious circle? Very important, but that's not the most important. The most important question I ask, and this is where neurobiology comes in, which part of you am I speaking to? Am I speaking to the here and now, present-based, prefrontal cortex, what I call the wise adult part of you, that can stop and think and decide, the most mature part of the brain? Or am I speaking to an inner child part of you? Am I speaking to the subcortical, flooded limbic system, more primitive parts of the brain, automatic, fight or flight? Am I speaking to what we call the wounded child part of you, which is when I do imaginative work, very young, first moments of life to 4 or 5, the part of you that's just flooded with what happened to you and wants to crawl into somebody's lap and cry? Or between this wise adult and this flooded child, am I speaking to the part of you that I call your adaptive child part? This is a kid's version of an adult. It's the you that you cobble together in the face of either parental tension or neglect. And it's an immature version of what an adult is supposed to look like. Let me run it down. The adaptive child part of us is black and white, perfectionistic, unforgiving, harsh, rigid, certain, tight in your body. And one of my clients said about her adaptive child part, it was a little fundamentalist that lived inside of her. That's right, that's wrong, that's good, that's bad. A mature part, the wise adult part of this, is nuanced, fluid, flexible, forgiving, understands gray, is not harsh. And most of the people, I deal with couples, on the brink of divorce. I'm like the turnaround guy. Most of the people that I see have lived most of their lives out of the adaptive child part, thinking that that is a functional adult. And they do very well in the world. The world mirrors the values of our adaptive child, but they make a hash of their personal lives, and they're not very happy between their ears. To live well relationally, you have to move out of that adaptive part of you into the wise adult, because only the prefrontal cortex has the ability to remember relationship. I talk about us consciousness versus you and me consciousness. And it goes like, may I riff on this? It goes like this.
Yeah.
The autonomic nervous system scans our bodies 4 times a second. Am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? Am I safe? If the answer is yes, I'm safe, we stay seated in that mature part of our brains, the prefrontal cortex. If the answer is no, I'm in danger, boom, we move into automatic. I have 3 automatic responses: fight, flight, or fix. I'm a fighter. My wife's a fighter. We both grew up in fighting fans. Screw me, screw you. Fleer. You can be sitting 6 inches in front of somebody and fleeing. That's called stonewalling. And fix, that's for all the caretakers, codependents, podcast hosts, therapists. It's not an adult, let me work on this. It's a child, compulsive, anxious. Oh my God, you're unhappy. I can't be happy until you're happy. Fight, flight, or fix. Automatic knee-jerk response. And I'd like our listeners to take a moment right now. I know that 364 days out of the year, you're in your wise adult. Congratulations. But on that one little day that you might slip, I want you to ask yourself, are you a fighter, a fleer, or a fixer? And what's your partner? And just doing that exercise will tell you a lot about what the dynamic's going to be between the two of you.
It's also interesting to think that my last partner was a fighter and my current partner is a fleer.
Both excellent.
Or actually he might be a fixer. Think about our conversation today. We haven't had too many recent or, like big blowouts or even problems, because as soon as the old relationship things started to creep back in, I'm like, oh, we're taking care of this. We're going to have the tools. We're going to go do this, and we're good. It's been 4 years, and I'm thinking he's either a fixer. He's definitely not a fighter. He's either a fixer or a fleer. But I see it in my clients too. I see it in relationships. I see it when people get to a new level and they get uncomfortable. And so when you said that we scan, am I safe? 4 times a day?
4 times a second.
I'm sorry, 4 times a second. Yeah, right. 4 times a second. Is there a study that shows or no matter where you are, like on your emotional health scale, no matter where? Okay. Because there are definitely people who, let's talk about Doug for a second. So when he first got with me, his anxiety level was really high and he did not feel safe. He didn't feel safe in his last relationship. He didn't feel safe financially. He just didn't feel safe. He didn't know he didn't feel safe. He had anxiety. And I've watched it, come down to, it's not nothing, but it's, 80% less than what it was.
Right.
And so thinking about that safety piece makes me wonder if someone does it more or someone does it less than 4 times a second.
Well, I don't know. I'm not that well-versed a neurobiologist to answer that. But I will say this. The safety is psychological safety. Am I safe with this person? Am I safe in this relationship? Yeah, you're asking yourself, is there a saber-toothed tiger around? That's evolutionary, and that's true too. And sure, there are people stuck in anxiety who feel, and there may be a biological component, more frightened than others. But by and large, if I'm not safe, there are two reasons. One is the person is not safe to be with in that moment. They're either moving in and being intrusive, or they're pulling out and being abandoning, and I'm not safe. That's real. Or more likely, I'm being trauma triggered. The person, it goes back to what we were saying before about making stuff up. The person's perfectly fine, but they just moved too close to what happened to you as a kid, and you get flooded. Remember, I've said this in other podcasts with you. We don't remember trauma, we relive it. The nervous system is back there. And so I had a critical father. My wife, Belinda, comes in and says, "Hell, this place is a mess." Boom. I'm that 5-year-old, and she's my towering father. I'm not thinking my wife reminds me of my father. I am that 5-year-old boy for a moment. I'm in that wounded child, but not for long. Most of us don't stay there. It's too uncomfortable. Within seconds, the adaptive child part of me comes in to take over. And it's like, hey, you, don't you, and I'm off to the races. The adaptive child part of us fuels the dysfunctional relational stance that we repeat in our close relationships over and over and over again. It's what we learned to do to preserve ourselves and protect ourselves. And the minute the heat is on, boom, that knee-jerk response takes over. Until you do the work, and that's what the whole book is about, you do the work of cultivating a different way of handling that heated moment.
So what's new for couples, or is this book for everybody? I mean, obviously everybody is part of some kind of relationship, whether they don't have one, they currently have one, they're looking for one. So obviously it would be for everybody, but more specifically, is it good for people who are unhappy in general as an individual, or for people that are struggling in relationships?
Well, first of all, the first relationship I start off with is your relationship to you. And how do you hold yourself? You know, self-esteem is the capacity, it's just what it says, to esteem yourself, the capacity to hold yourself warmly and lovingly in the face of your human imperfections and screw-ups. And who in our culture does that? Very few of us. You have to learn how to do it. You know, I've said this in other podcasts, but it's so juicy. If your listeners only get this one thing today, this is what I want them to get. Harshness is a quality of the adaptive child. The wise adult part of us is not harsh. And what I want people to get, and this could be life-changing for a lot of people, there is no redeeming value in harshness. Whether it's between you and another, whether it's incoming in your direction, whether it's between your ears. There's nothing that harshness does that loving firmness doesn't do better. If it's harsh, you're in that primitive part of the brain. Pull yourself out of it. And you can pull yourself out of it. To me, that's the great news of this work and of this book. Can I tell you a story?
Of course.
This is a story I always use to illustrate this. It's an absolutely true story. Forgive me if you heard it. A guy comes to me, and I deal with couples on the brink of divorce. On the brink of divorce. Why? He's a chronic liar. He lies about everything. Yeah, I've told you this story. Right?
And it was on the inner child work, which was a couple months ago, as of the recording of this and of the publishing of this. Yes, you talked about the guy, and it was about the milk and at the store, and he said to, which, by the way, and the only reason why it's not that I don't want you to tell the story again. I want everyone who's listening to this who hasn't heard that to go or watched it, go back. It's Inner Child Work is the name of the podcast with Terry Real. So it's here on YouTube. It's on the podcast. Go back. It is worth listening to if you've not heard it. Okay, continue.
All right, I'll tell it again. It's my sort of prototypic story about recovery. So he's a chronic liar. His wife's fed up. So show me the thumbprint and I'll tell you about the thumb. This is what I was saying earlier. Yes, it's in your head, but it came from somewhere. It came from a relationship. So this guy is a champion evader. All right, I asked him a question. If you don't know how to think relationally, it seems like brilliant. I need to come up with that. If you think relationally, it's a piece of cake. Who was he evading? So I say to him, who tried to control you growing up? His father, military man, how he ate, how he drank, how he dressed, the friends he had, everything. How did you deal with this uber controlling father? He looks at me, I love this, and he smiles. And he says, I lied. Brilliant boy. I teach my students, always be respectful of the exquisite intelligence of that adaptation. You did just what you needed to do to survive in that circumstance. Good for you. But I have a saying, adaptive then, maladaptive now. He's not that 4-year-old boy. She's not his father. He's about to get divorced. So you're right about the story. They go, she sends him to a grocery store to pick up 12 things. He comes back with 11. She says, where's the pumpernickel? He says, every muscle and nerve in my body was screaming to say they were out of it. And I took a breath. I found my courage. I looked my wife in the eye and I said, I forgot it. And she burst into tears. True story. And she said, I've been waiting for this moment for 25 years. That's a moment of grace, health, recovery. That's what we're looking for. And the news in my book is you can cultivate that skill. You can build that muscle. I call it relational mindfulness, shifting from the automatic knee-jerk, this is what I always do. Take a breath, take a break, take a walk around the block, take 20 minutes if you need to, but get yourself centered. I call it remembering love. Remember that the person you're speaking to is someone you love, and the reason why you're speaking is to make it better. Go for that until you're centered in that place. Shut the hell up. You know, I gave workshops around the country for a number of years, and I had a bunch of slides. And my favorite slide was this one. Other workshops teach you skills. We deal with the part of you that won't use them.
Yeah, that's really good. When you were telling that story, I was having a deja vu flashback of my marriage and in a fight, remembering another, like, because I'm pretty good in the situation of if I'm being blamed, and I had worked on my own stuff, but like trying to figure out another way in. How do I diffuse this? What can I say? What can I do? And I remember saying, do you believe I love you? Do you feel my love for you? Yes. Okay. Do you think that what I'm trying to do is hurt you? No. Okay. Can we remember that when you're when you're reacting from the place of like you're defending your life, that to remember that I love you and I'm trying to help us. And it's right. It's like, I'm not trying to hurt at all, ever. My goal is never to create pain or to hurt you. So if we could maybe remember that, so, as we're getting in, and I know you're saying that's not possible because of what's the circuitry that's being run.
No. What you're doing with your partner in that moment is exactly what I'm talking about. You're saying, yoo-hoo, I'm not the enemy. I'm not 12 feet tall. I don't have 4 arms. I don't have guns in my hand. And you're see, what happens to us is when we get trauma triggered, we lose what I call us consciousness. We lose the remembrance of the relationship. Like literally, neurologically, we cannot hold it. We're no longer in the part of the brain that can do that. We're in a much more primitive part of the brain that's about you versus me, that's about survival, and that lives in a win-lose world with limited resources, and you're in a much less mature part of the brain. And what you were doing with your husband in that moment is you were saying, excuse me, can we get back in the more mature part of your brain so that we can talk to each other? You were literally, and this is what I mean when I say we co-regulate each other. We co-regulate each other's nervous system. You were lending him your prefrontal cortex for a few minutes to see if you could bring his back online. That is a very sophisticated thing to do.
Thank you. As you were saying that, I'm like, oh, I did that. I remember that because I was trying to take an approach. I'm really good at problem solving. So when something doesn't work, I'm like, okay, what else can I do? And like bring it. And I like to get down to the bottom line. The bottom line here is I never want to hurt you. I never want to hurt anybody. So if you're getting hurt, there's a disconnect. And it's not because I'm intending that. So can we remember that this is like supposed to be for life? And this is why but now I'm really getting on a much deeper level, your book. Because I was looking at like the us piece versus individual piece, and I was doing it on a broad, and again, probably one of my triggers is the rampant victim mentality that is in our society. And it's one of my pet peeves. So I always try to I'm always looking for where that possibly can be present. So I'm glad we got that out of the way. But the whole us thing, yeah, that was a big light bulb for me on our very first show about new rules of marriage was the power struggle. And I was like, oh my God, I was in a power struggle the whole time and I didn't even know it. Like the power struggle is what you're talking about. And
the power struggle is an absolute delusion. There's no such thing. Unless somebody's got a gun to your head, they don't have power over you. And you know what? Gandhi taught us, if you're willing to die, he brought down the British Empire. If you're willing to die, nobody has power over you, no matter what they do. There's no such thing as a power struggle. If you frame it as one of us wins and one of us loses, you are not in the right part of your mind. Listen, here's what I call ecological wisdom. Your relationship is your biosphere. You don't stand apart from it, you're in it. And you breathe it. You can choose to pollute your biosphere by acting like a jerk over here, but you're going to breathe in that pollution in your partner's withdrawal or resentment over here. You cannot escape your link. The delusion of individualism, toxic individualism, which is I go into the history of it. It's creation of a bunch of landed gentry, wealthy white men in the Enlightenment. It's not an eternal concept. It has a history. The delusion of individualism is I am apart from nature. That's what that's what the word means. I'm separate from nature. The delusion of patriarchy, which comes right in underneath that, is I stand above nature and can control it. Whether the nature I'm dominating is my wife, my kids, my thinking, I've got to be more positive, my body, I've got to lose more pounds. And this dominant model wreaks havoc in our personal relationships, wreaks havoc as a society. I talk about coming out from under the great lie, the lie that a human being can be superior or inferior, essentially, to another human being. Bullshit. But Western civilization is based on that lie. And it wreaks havoc on our planet. If we don't understand that we don't stand above nature, but within it, we could all perish. It's that simple. This is a suicidal idea. So understanding that you're in the biosphere, that you depend upon it, means it's not that you win and I lose. It's I may be willing to sacrifice this want right now to my biosphere, not to you, but to the relationship, because the relationship will sustain me and make it worth my. I deal with these big tough guys, right? And they say, well, why should I have to work so hard to please my wife? And I go, dummy, because you live with her. Let's start with that.
Oh my God. Amen to that. Like how, it's just too hard. All right. Well, guess what? You're going to repeat the pattern again and again. You can learn it now, or you can avoid it and move on to a new. And then it's going to follow you because you can't outrun it, because it's literally how you're wired. You can't outrun your pain. It's eventually going to catch up with you. So that was why I stayed as long as I did, was because that was my position. Look, we all go through this. This is something that we're going to work on, and you need to work on it in relationship together. And if we don't learn it now, it's going to get repeated. So why not just stay? You've already committed, just stay and work on it. No, that's too hard. It's too hard, JJ. You're too hard. You're too mean. You're too, you don't care about my feelings. So,
Yeah. Well, the other thing, and I talk about this in the book, is work on it now or your kids are going to work on it. Pass it back or pass it on. And this work of learning to live in a more mature part of us, learning to think and behave relationally. This is not just for us, JJ. This is for the next generation. And a lot of people, particularly guys, my big tough guys I work with, who won't do this for their sake and won't do this for their blankety blank wives, will do it to spare their children. Hmm. So it's not just about us, it's about what we're going to do to pass on to the next generation.
Yeah, absolutely. Epigenetically, we have learned behaviors and inherited emotional DNA and patterns that we see what's normal, what's not normal. And our kids will absolutely repeat if it's not conscious. I'm teaching a class right now. And one of the things that when people went back to do core wounds, I prefaced before they did this was to say, hey, your parents did the best they could. And like, remember, this is not to blame them. And most likely they have their core wounds that were never addressed either. They're still running the show. So try to take a step back and have compassion. And someone today said, wow, for the first time, I now look at and wonder what had to happen to my parents to make them who they were and create that kind of compassion. So in this book, what can we expect, like in terms of the exercises or the newness of the new rules of marriage to now in not only like loving, partnering, intimate relationships, but for children and for friends and for other people on the planet that we just have relationships with?
Well, relationships are relationships. I mean, I start off in the book with neurobiology, what's going on in your brain, what's going on in the other people's brain and how they interact. I talk about the history of individualism as a concept. I talk mostly about personal relationships and new ways of being in them. I'm going to double back on that. But then I fade out to issues like racism, patriarchy, sexism, and ecology, the planet at large. This is one of the things I say, JJ, we may not be able to bring peace to Ukraine. We may not have it in our power to bring peace to the Middle East, but we can damn well bring peace to our living rooms and bedrooms. Let's start there. And we can make peace between our ears. Let's start there. So this is a new rule book. This is newer than even the new rules of marriage. I'll tell you why. Once we learn to think ecologically, relationally, once we put ourselves in the biosphere, I call that ecological humility. I'm in it, I'm not above it. All the rules change. I have a saying, you can be right or you can be married. What's more important there? And let me give you an example. It's a difference between saying, JJ, stop talking to me like that. Okay. Or saying, JJ, I want to hear what you have to say. Could you tone it down so I could hear it? Two ways of saying the same thing, but one's wise and one's stupid. Or the difference between saying, I need more sex in this relationship, and saying, honey, we both deserve a great sex life. What do we need to do to jumpstart this thing? Two ways of saying the same thing. But one cherishes the partner and the relationship at the same time that you assert yourself. Who the hell knows how to do that? Not in this culture. In patriarchal culture, which is the water we're all swimming in, you can be either connected or you can be powerful, but you can't be both at the same time. Because power is dominance, it's power over. When you move into power, you break connection. And I see that with a lot of women. A lot of women, it's like, I was weak, now I'm strong, go screw yourself. And that's not a step up, that's just shifting roles. Step up sounds like this. I was weak, now I'm strong, I'm going to stand toe to toe with you. This is what I need. What do you need from me to help you give it to me? That's wise. Who sounds like that? What can I give you to help you give me what I'm asking for? We're a team. And once you start remembering that we're in this together, the relational answer to the question who's right and who's wrong is who gives a shit. What matters is how are we as a team going to work this issue in a way that's going to work for both of us. So the map changes, and when the map changes, the toolbox changes. All of the skills are different once we learn to think relationally.
Well, what I love what you said about the biosphere, to me, it just is perspective. And because when you're in a relationship, whatever relationship, let's just take the couple for a second, and it's just you and that person, your viewpoint is not wide enough to consider all the things. And again, that individualism is easier when you have nothing to compare it against. If you take a belief system or a perspective or a view that says that I am one with nature and we're all, and you broaden it, now all of a sudden, I feel like that energetically puts somebody a little more grounded, a little more at ease. And possibly, I mean, even just think about like your issues. People have issues, whatever they're mad about, which I love breaking that down into like, what's this really about? When someone's screaming about the cover on the toothpaste, it's like, okay, well, first of all, that's not what that's really about. But let's say it is what it's really about, or your ability to control somebody, or your ability to not have safety, or whatever that is. But then if we take a broader perspective, like you wouldn't be caring about that if you couldn't get water. You wouldn't be caring about that if your house was on fire. And if we take a broader perspective, it makes the things that we're literally focused on and getting ourselves all twirly about not important, because it's not. And I think that focal point for looking at this from the perspective of like being part of this intricate system that we're a part of, that we're not separate from, that we're in, whether we want to be in it or not, is just makes people feel, again, it would give me a sense of trust. It would give me a sense of connection. It would give me a sense of purpose. And it would really take whatever I was yapping about and really put in the category of, is this really that important? Like I would change the perspective on that. And I think, so to me, like looking at this book from that perspective of literally like you're taking a couple different interviews I've done and shows and concepts, and we're kind of all putting it together. And now we're using it rather than just looking at whatever we want to accomplish or getting rid of disease, or which we've done that. Now we're looking at how do I live a happier, more connected life with people, and how do I change my perspective to do that, and how does that help me stay in my prefrontal cortex instead of me running the pattern that says I'm not safe, because I am safe. Look around. If I believe I'm one with nature, I'm very safe. But if I believe I'm separate and that everything could come and get me at any point in time, then I'm constantly looking over. There was a constant not feeling safe happening in my relationship. And it was from all sides, from life, from people, from me, and there's nothing I felt like I could do about that. I mean, I did. I changed me. So got back to like, you can't help the war here, but you can do what's in here. And when you can get yourself to a different frequency of being calmer, I noticed that everybody around me was different. How they reacted to me, how they interacted with me was very different, because I was calmer. And I wasn't pulling from them or triggering them in ways that would give a response and on a different level. So I really enjoy the idea of taking this work into this connectedness with nature and with the world and with people, because I feel like it stops the me. Because in the me has the victim story attached to it. And all of a sudden, if we're going to broaden this out, I'm not a victim any longer, because everybody's on the same journey.
That's right. I had a wonderful talk with a summit I recently did with a spiritual teacher, Thomas Ubel, German mystic who now lives in Tel Aviv and does incredible healing work with Jews and Germans and Israelis and Palestinians. And I was in a group that he was running, and there was a German man, and he was talking about his grandfather, who was a Nazi. Now, I'm Jewish, and I have a visceral reaction to Nazis. I mean, they are not human beings to me. They are the monster. And this man told about a dialogue he had with his grandfather, in which his grandfather said to him, after World War I lived on the streets. There were rats, there were bullies. I was basically starving for the first 10 years of my life. And as a young adolescent, this man, Adolf Hitler, came in, and he turned to his grandson with tears, and he said, "God forgive me But for the first time in my life, I felt hope. And I listened to this story and I felt this amazing thing, JJ. I felt empathy for a Nazi. My heart melted. And that is about coming into this oneness, this connection. We disassociate by turning other human beings into caricatures. We disassociate by saying, we're not like you. And really, if we're honest, we are superior to you. And I call that the great lie. We're not superior or inferior to any damn person. We exist on this planet as a child of God or nature, and our essential value is the same as everybody else's. And when you stop having to prove your worth, and you can settle into it, and you can settle into everybody else's worth as well, things relax. You know, one of the things I say in the book is you cannot love from a one-up superior position, and you cannot love from a one-down inferior position. Love demands democracy.
Nice. Well, let's talk about when the book so today is June 7th and the book is available today for the very first time. So where can they get it, Terry?
You can get it at anywhere books are sold. Amazon, your local bookstore should be in, and it's all over the place. You can do me a favor if you feel up to it, which is buy it this week. This is the week the New York Times counts to put me or not on the bestseller list. So I'm going to go me, and say I would love this to make the New York Times. If you're going to buy it now.
Us getting past you and me to build a more loving relationship. So here's my suggestion. Think about all the people who you love, your family, your children, your parents, your neighbors, your clients, people that are open to getting information. They enjoy this kind of thing, or just buy a bunch of them to give away later, maybe at Christmas time or when you need to for people. So get the book. Can they get it at terryreal.com?
And there'll be links. There'll be all sorts of links on the website to get it.
Great.
And while we're at it, let me also add, just go to the website and get to be part of the newsletter and stuff that we send out, because there will be us workshops, an online workshop taught by me for both individuals and couples, both professionals and what I call normal people, the general public, to learn some of these essential relationship skills. And that will be happening this summer, so stay tuned.
All right, terryreal.com to sign up for the newsletter and to, I think, take your test to see how screwed up you are. And then get the book, as you said, get the book on Amazon or follow the link on terryreal.com or Barnes & Noble or wherever you get books. And will there be an audio version also?
There is an audio version. I'm very proud to say that none other than Bruce Springsteen has written the foreword to this book. And Bruce did me the great favor of recording his own foreword. It's beautiful to listen to. So you can get both me and Bruce either in print or in Audible.
Oh my God, congratulations. That's exciting. And it's amazing. And I'm glad that you're rating it. I really prefer when I know the person and have followed you, that when I'm listening, it's you. I want to hear you. I don't want to hear somebody with an accent who I don't know read your book. So thank you for reading your own book. You can get it on audio and you can get it on hard copy as well. And anything else that you want to encourage, definitely, like I said, everybody think outside the box here in terms of not just for you, but for anyone else who you think needs to know anything about any of these relationship skills. And I'm sure you can think of at least a couple, and you can hold them for birthdays and holiday presents, but get them now. And anything else you want to add, Terry, before we say goodbye?
No, I just want to do two things. First, to invite everybody onto the website. It's chock full of tools and skills and goodies. I talked earlier about taking a break. There's a one-pager on the 10 commandments of how to take a time out. There's lots of resources on the website, terryreal.com. And the other thing I want to say, JJ, is bless you, my dear. Thank you for the wonderful work that you do. You are a spirit of light. It just radiates off of you, and it's always a joy to be here with you.
Thank you. We're always welcome back. And I think this is the first episode where I haven't cried. So I think it's the first time we didn't therapy me. And I was like, oh, what are we going to therapy me on today? So we'll have to have you back so you can break me down because that's always fun. And I appreciate you and the fact that you've been here often to share your wisdom and guidance for all who need it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.